I, 28M, met Kaylee, 26F, 5 years ago during my final year of Masters in Engineering. She was my sister Amy's best friend and roommate in college. Amy always talked about how amazing Kaylee was and how we would be perfect for each other. I wasn't interested in dating at the time since I was focused on finishing my degree, but Amy insisted I meet Kaylee at least once. The first time I saw Kaylee was at a college party Amy had organized. Kaylee was studying psychology and had this way of making everyone around her feel comfortable. She was intelligent, funny, and could hold conversations about almost anything. We ended up talking the entire night about everything from our favorite bands to our career goals. By the end of the night, I had to admit that Amy was right, there was definitely a connection between us. We started dating shortly after that night. Kaylee would come over to my apartment to study, and I'd help her with math while she helped me understand people better. She had this natural ability to read people and situations, which I always admired. Our relationship progressed quickly, and within 6 months, we were practically living together. After graduation, we both got lucky with job placements in the same city. I landed a position as a mechanical engineer at a manufacturing plant, while Kaylee got a job as a counselor at a local high school. We decided to make things official and moved in together. 2 years later, we got married in a small ceremony with just family and close friends. My family absolutely adored Kaylee from the beginning. My mom, who had always been somewhat critical of my previous girlfriends, treated Kaylee like the daughter she never had. Amy lived abroad for work, so my mom was especially happy to have Kaylee around. My dad would often joke that they got a better deal in Kaylee than I did. Even my extended family loved her, my aunts would always invite her for shopping trips, and my uncles would ask for her advice on dealing with their teenagers. But my grandmother had a special bond with Kaylee. Grandma wasn't an easy person to please, but somehow Kaylee won her over completely. They would spend hours together in the kitchen, with Grandma teaching Kaylee our old family recipes. Kaylee would visit Grandma even when I couldn't make it, helping her with groceries or just keeping her company. Grandma often told me how lucky I was to have found someone who cared so much about family. The first 3 years of our marriage were perfect. We both had stable jobs, took regular vacations, and were saving up to buy our own house. We had a 5-year plan: buy a house, start a family, and eventually move to a bigger city for better opportunities. Kaylee was great at managing our finances, so I let her handle most of our money matters. We had a joint account where we both contributed equally, and things were working smoothly. Everything changed when Grandma passed away 6 months ago. It wasn't entirely unexpected, she had been sick for a while, but it hit our family hard, especially me. Grandma and I had always been close. When I was young, I would spend every summer at her house, helping her in her garden or listening to stories about our family history. Her house was practically my second home growing up. The real shock came during the reading of her will. Grandma had left her house to me. It was a beautiful Victorian-style home, well-maintained and in a prime location, worth around $800,000. She left some money and her jewelry collection to Amy, which seemed fair since she already had a successful career abroad. My parents didn't have any issues with this arrangement as they were financially comfortable with their own home and savings. When we got home after the will reading, Kaylee was unusually quiet. Later that night, she started talking about how this was a great opportunity for us. She suggested we sell the house and use the money as a down payment for a property in Oakwood Heights, an upscale neighborhood she had been eyeing. Her argument was that we could get a bigger, more modern house in a prestigious area, which would be better for our future kids. I was surprised by her suggestion. I had always talked about how much Grandma's house meant to me. It wasn't just a property, it was where I had grown up, where all our family gatherings happened, where I had my first birthday party, where I learned to ride a bike in the backyard. I told Kaylee I wanted us to move in there instead of selling it. This led to our first major argument. Kaylee insisted the house was too old and would need expensive renovations. She complained about the neighborhood, saying it wasn't as prestigious as Oakwood Heights. She talked about resale value and investment potential. When I pointed out that the house was mortgage-free and in good condition, she accused me of being stuck in the past. The arguments continued for weeks. Kaylee became increasingly hostile, making comments about how I was too emotionally attached to material things. She started suggesting that Grandma had been manipulative by leaving the house to me instead of dividing it equally between me and Amy. These comments hurt deeply because she knew how close I was to Grandma. What really caught me off guard was when Kaylee started involving my family. She went to my parents, crying about how my attachment to the house was affecting our marriage. She told them I wasn't considering our future or her feelings. To my shock, my parents took her side. My mom started calling me daily, telling me I needed to think about my marriage and that Grandma would have wanted us to use the house to build a better future. Even Amy, who usually supported me in everything, told me I was being unreasonable. Kaylee had apparently been messaging her regularly about our fights, painting me as someone who was letting an inheritance destroy our marriage. The only person who seemed to understand was my grandfather, but he lived in another state and wasn't actively involved in our daily lives. Things reached a breaking point last month when Kaylee gave me an ultimatum: either we sell the house, or she would move out temporarily to give me space to think about our future. When I still refused to sell, She packed her bags that night and went to stay with my parents. Since then, my entire family has turned against me. My mom calls daily to tell me I'm being selfish. My dad has threatened to cut contact if I don't apologize to Kaylee. My aunts and uncles, who once treated me like their favorite nephew, now barely speak to me. They all think I'm choosing a house over my wife's happiness. I'm now living alone in our apartment while Kaylee stays with my parents. My family only contacts me to criticize my decision. Kaylee has somehow convinced everyone that I'm the villain in this situation. The worst part is that she's now talking about putting the house on the market without my consent, claiming it would be best for everyone involved. I feel completely isolated and betrayed, not just by Kaylee but by my entire family. Should I give in to keep my family together? Or should I stand my ground and risk losing everyone? I feel like I'm going crazy being the only one who sees the situation differently. Update 1. The situation has gotten much worse. It's been 3 weeks since my last post, and what I've discovered has left me questioning not just my marriage but everything I thought I knew about Kaylee. After Kaylee moved out to stay with my parents, I started looking through our financial records. Something felt off about the way she had been acting about money lately. She had always handled most of our finances since she was better at it than me, and I trusted her completely. That trust turned out to be a huge mistake. When I logged into our joint account, I noticed something strange. Large sums of money had been withdrawn over the past 4 months, ranging from $2,000 to $5,000 each time. These weren't our usual expenses. In total, almost $45,000 had disappeared from our joint savings without my knowledge. I initially thought there must be some mistake or our account had been hacked. I called the bank immediately. They confirmed that all transactions were legitimate and had been made using Kaylee's card and credentials. The money had been transferred to another account, but due to privacy policies, they couldn't give me more information. When I asked about the possibility of fraud, they told me that all transfers had been done from recognized devices and locations we frequently used. I tried calling Kaylee multiple times to ask about the money, but she wouldn't pick up my calls. I finally drove to my parents' house to confront her. When I arrived, only my mom was home with Kaylee. The moment I mentioned the money, Kaylee burst into tears. My mom immediately went into protective mode, telling me I was harassing Kaylee and needed to leave. Before my mom could push me out, I showed her the bank statements on my phone. Even she looked shocked at the amount. Kaylee, still crying, claimed she had been saving the money for our future house in Oakwood Heights. But that didn't make sense. We already had a separate house fund that we both contributed to monthly. When I pressed further, my mom suddenly seemed uncomfortable. She asked Kaylee to go upstairs so she could talk to me alone. What my mom told me next made my blood run cold. Kaylee had been consulting with a lawyer about forcing a sale of my grandmother's house through legal means. She had been using our joint savings to pay for legal consultations and to build a case against me. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My own mother had known about this and hadn't told me. When I confronted her about keeping this from me, she defended herself saying Kaylee had convinced her it was the only way to save our marriage. According to Kaylee, I had become obsessed with the house to an unhealthy degree, and this was affecting my judgment. The more I dug, the worse things got. Kaylee had been keeping detailed records of all our arguments about the house. She had been writing emails to herself documenting what she claimed was my emotional instability and unhealthy attachment to material possessions. She had even recorded some of our conversations without my knowledge. I later found out through a mutual friend that Kaylee had been spreading rumors about me in our social circle. She told people I was financially controlling and emotionally abusive. She claimed I was preventing her from advancing in life by forcing her to live in an old house she didn't want. Several of our friends, people I had known for years, started distancing themselves from me. Some even blocked me on social media. The situation got even more bizarre when I went back to our apartment to get some more of my clothes. My key wouldn't work. Kaylee had changed the locks without telling me. When I called her about it, she said it was for her safety because I had been acting unpredictable lately. She said she would have someone drop off my things at my office. I couldn't believe this was the same woman I had married. The Kaylee I knew would never do these things. But apparently, that Kaylee never existed. My mom tried to justify Kaylee's actions, saying she was just scared and desperate. My dad, when he found out, said I had driven her to take these measures by being stubborn about the house. I finally decided to protect myself and hired a lawyer. The moment my family found out, they accused me of escalating the situation unnecessarily. My dad called me in a rage, saying I was turning a simple property dispute into a legal battle. He couldn't understand that I was just defending myself against whatever Kaylee was planning. The only person who started seeing things differently was my sister Amy. When I told her about the missing money and the secret legal consultations, she finally began to question Kaylee's motives. Amy admitted that Kaylee's recent behavior didn't match the friend she thought she knew. She's now trying to talk sense into our parents, but they're so thoroughly convinced by Kaylee's version of events that they won't listen. My grandfather called me yesterday after hearing about everything. He suggested I dig deeper into Kaylee's background, saying something about her behavior seemed calculated rather than emotional. He pointed out how she had systematically turned my family against me while building evidence to support her side of the story. Looking back now, I can see how Kaylee manipulated everyone around her. She spent years building relationships with my family, becoming the perfect daughter-in-law, the perfect sister-in-law, the perfect wife. She knew exactly how to play on my family's emotions and turn them against me. Now I'm left wondering if any of it was ever real, or if I was just another target in whatever game she's playing. I've moved into my grandmother's house now, despite my family's protests. At least here, surrounded by real memories of someone who truly loved me, I can think clearly. I don't know what Kaylee's next move will be, but I'm not going to let her steal what my grandmother wanted me to have. Update 2. Everything makes sense now. It's been 2 months since my last update, and the truth about Kaylee has finally come out. What my sister Amy uncovered has left me feeling sick to my stomach. After my last update, Amy took emergency leave from her job abroad and flew back home. She said she couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong about this whole situation. Being Kaylee's former best friend and roommate, she had access to information and connections that I didn't. Amy started by reaching out to their old college friends. Most of them had lost touch with Kaylee over the years, which Amy found strange since Kaylee had always been the one who kept their friend group together. One friend mentioned that Kaylee had completely changed her identity after college. She had gotten rid of all her old social media accounts and started fresh. The real breakthrough came when Amy talked to their old dorm supervisor, who remembered Kaylee because of a strange incident. Apparently, Kaylee had received mail under a different last name during their final year. When questioned about it, she had brushed it off as a mistake. The supervisor still had records of this incident, including the name. Using this information, Amy did some digging and discovered something shocking. Kaylee had been married before, under her previous name. She had divorced her ex-husband James right before starting college, which explained why none of us knew about it. But the circumstances of that divorce were disturbingly similar to our current situation. James had inherited several properties from his grandfather. Kaylee had married him shortly after his inheritance and spent months convincing him to sell the properties. She had used the same tactics, isolating him from his family, claiming emotional abuse, and even involving his relatives in pressuring him. Once the properties were sold and the money was in their joint account, she filed for divorce and walked away with half of everything. When Amy confronted Kaylee with this information, she broke down. She admitted that she had targeted me after learning about my family's wealth through Amy during college. She had spent years carefully building relationships with my family members, studying their personalities and learning how to manipulate them. Even her career choice as a school counselor was calculated. It gave her credibility when she started claiming I was emotionally unstable. The most painful revelation was about my parents' involvement. When Amy told them about Kaylee's past marriage, they looked guilty. After some pressure, they admitted that they had known about it. Kaylee had told them her version of the story early in our relationship, claiming James was abusive and that she had been forced to flee with nothing. My parents, already charmed by Kaylee, believed her completely and agreed to keep it secret from me to protect her privacy. My lawyer contacted James's family and found a pattern. Kaylee had done this before James too, with another man in her hometown. She had a history of targeting men who were set to inherit valuable property. Each time, she would spend years building trust, creating a perfect image of herself, then systematically work to obtain the property before leaving. We found emails where Kaylee had reached out to James's family years after their divorce, apologizing for what she had done. She had written about getting therapy for her compulsive behavior around money and property. Obviously, that was another lie, as she was already involved with me when she sent those emails. The most calculated part of her plan was how she used my sister Amy. She had deliberately befriended Amy in college after learning about our family through mutual friends. She spent 2 years building that friendship before ever meeting me, gathering information about my grandmother's property and our family dynamics. When I shared all this evidence with my family, their reaction was mixed. My parents were devastated. They finally realized how thoroughly they had been manipulated. My mom hasn't stopped crying since finding out how she helped Kaylee try to steal my inheritance. My dad, who had been Kaylee's biggest supporter, now can't even say her name without getting angry. Kaylee tried to deny everything at first, but when faced with the evidence, she changed tactics. She started calling my family members, crying and claiming she did it all because she truly loved me and wanted a better life for us. Nobody's buying it anymore. I filed for divorce. Kaylee tried to contest it, still playing the victim, but my lawyer has built a solid case with all the evidence we've gathered. Her previous marriages, the hidden bank transfers, the manipulated recordings, everything shows a clear pattern of deception and fraud. The hardest part in all of this isn't losing Kaylee. Now that I know the truth, I feel nothing but disgust for her. The hardest part is rebuilding trust with my family. They chose to believe Kaylee over me, their own son and brother. They actively helped her try to steal what my grandmother wanted me to have. That betrayal will take a long time to heal. Update 3. 6 months have passed since my last update. The divorce is finally complete, and thanks to my grandmother's insistence on a prenup, she was wiser than I ever knew. Kaylee walked away with nothing from my inheritance. My lawyer also managed to recover about half of the money she had taken from our joint account. After the truth came out, Kaylee tried everything to salvage her image. She showed up at my office crying, sent long emails to my family explaining how she was a changed person, and even tried to get our old mutual friends to convince me to reconsider the divorce. When none of that worked, she turned nasty. She threatened to ruin my reputation at work, tried to claim I had been abusive during our marriage, and even attempted to contact my grandmother's lawyer to contest the will. None of her attempts worked. Her previous pattern of behavior was too well documented, and her lies fell apart under scrutiny. Last month, she finally moved to Arizona. I heard through Amy that she's already engaged to someone else, a real estate developer who recently inherited his father's business. I almost felt like warning him, but my lawyer advised against any contact with her. The relationship with my family is slowly healing, but it's different now. My parents have been trying to make amends. They sold their house and moved closer to me, hoping to rebuild our relationship. My mom comes by every weekend to help with the house renovations, and my dad has been teaching me about property maintenance. They're trying, but there's still this underlying tension. Every time they apologize, I can see they're haunted by how easily they turned against me. Amy moved back temporarily to help sort things out. She still carries a lot of guilt for introducing Kaylee into our lives. She's been my strongest support through all this, helping me renovate the house and keeping me company when things get too quiet. She's also been instrumental in helping our parents understand the depth of their betrayal and what they need to do to rebuild trust. The house renovation has become a family project of sorts. While clearing out the attic, we found boxes of old photographs. There was one of my grandmother standing in front of the house when she was my age, with my grandfather and their young children. Seeing that photo confirmed I made the right decision in keeping the house. This place isn't just property, it's our family's history. My extended family has also been trying to make amends. My aunts and uncles, who had sided with Kaylee, now avoid mentioning her name around me. They send occasional texts checking in, but our relationships remain distant. I'm not sure if things will ever go back to how they were before, but maybe that's not a bad thing. This experience has taught me a lot about setting boundaries, even with family. Surprisingly, my grandfather has become my closest confidant. He calls regularly to check on me and share stories about my grandmother. He told me she had insisted on the prenup because something about Kaylee reminded her of someone from her past, a woman who had married her brother for his money and left him broke. I wish I had paid more attention to those subtle warnings. The whole experience has changed me. I'm more cautious now, but not bitter. I've learned that sometimes being painted as the villain by everyone doesn't mean you're wrong. Standing your ground, even when it feels like the whole world is against you, can be the right thing to do. I lost my wife and temporarily lost my family's support, but I protected what mattered to me, and the truth eventually came out. I'm still living in my grandmother's house, slowly making it my own while preserving her memory. Every room holds stories of our family, and now I'm adding my own chapter to its history. It's not the life I imagined having at 28, but it's authentic, and that's worth more than any fake perfect marriage.